I just want more, I guess. Not a job, a life. I want to walk down the street and not have to worry about being called a baby killer. I want—" He sighed, smiled. "Don't worry. It'll all be okay. We'll be okay." "You'll get another job, Dad," she said. "Sure I will, Red. Tomorrow will be better." That was what her parents always said. On a cold, bleak morning in mid-April, Lenny got up early and staked out her place on the ratty floral sofa in the living room and turned on the Today Show. She adjusted the rabbit ears to get a decent picture. When it popped into focus, Barbara Walters was saying, "Patricia Hearst, now calling herself Tanya, seen here in this photograph holding an M1 carbine at the recent bank robbery in San Francisco. Eyewitnesses report that the 19-year-old heiress, who was kidnapped by the Symbionese Liberation Army in February." Lenny was spellbound. She still couldn't believe that an army could march in and take a teenager from her apartment. How could anyone be safe anywhere in a world like that? And how did a rich teenager become a revolutionary named Tanya? "Come on, Lenny," Mama said from the kitchen. "Get ready for school." The front door banged open. Dad came into the house, smiling in a way that made it impossible not to smile back. He looked out of scale, larger than life in the low-ceilinged kitchen, vibrant against the watermarked gray walls. Water dripped from his hair. Mama stood at the stove, frying bacon for breakfast. Dad swept into the kitchen and cranked up the transistor radio that sat on the Formica counter. A scratchy rock and roll song came through. Dad laughed and pulled Mama into his arms. Lenny heard his whispered, "I'm sorry, forgive me." "Always," Mama said, holding him as if she were afraid he'd push her away. Dad kept his arm around Mama's waist and pulled her over to the kitchen table. He pulled out a chair, said, "Lenny, come in here." Lenny loved it when they included her. She left her spot on the sofa and took a seat beside her mother. Dad smiled down at Lenny and handed her a paperback book, The Call of the Wild. "You'll love this, Red." He sat down across from Mama, scooted in close to the table. He was wearing what Lenny thought of as his big idea smile. She'd seen it before. Whenever he had a plan to change their lives, and he'd had a lot of plans. Selling everything and camping for a year as they drove the Big Sur Highway. Raising mink, what a horror that had been. Selling American seed packets in Central California. He reached into his pocket, pulled out a folded-up piece of paper, slapped it triumphantly on the table. "You remember my friend Bo Harlan?" Mama took a moment to answer. "From Nam?" Dad nodded. To Lenny, he said, "Bo Harlan was the crew chief, and I was the door gunner. We looked out for each other. We were together when our bird went down and we got captured. We went through hell together." Lenny noticed how he was shaking. His shirt sleeves were rolled up so she could see the burn scars that ran from his wrist to his elbow in ridges of puckered, disfigured skin that never tanned. Lenny didn't know what had caused his scars. He never said, and she never asked, but his captors had done it. She had figured out that much. The scars covered his back, too, pulled the skin into swirls and puckers. "They made me watch him die," he said. Lenny looked worriedly at Mama. Dad had never said this before. To hear the words now unsettled them. He tapped his foot on the floor, played a beat on the table with fast-moving fingers. He unfolded the letter, smoothed it out, and turned it so they could read the words. "Sergeant Albright, you are a hard man to find. I am Earl Harlan. My son, Bo, wrote many letters home about his friendship with you. I thank you for that. In his last letter, he told me that if anything happened to him in that piece of shit place, he wanted you to have his land up here in Alaska. It isn't much, 40 acres with a cabin that needs fixing, but a hard-working man can live off the land up here, away from the crazies and the hippies and the mess in the lower 48. I don't have no phone, but you can write me care of the Homer Post Office. I'll get the letter sooner or later. The land is at the end of the road, past the silver gate with a cow skull, and just before the burnt tree at mile marker 13. Thanks again, Earl.